The Marvel Cinematic Universe is full of beloved characters, but the longer this franchise goes on, the more inconsistent those characters' abilities get. How many times have you been left scratching your head because one character is so powerful in one movie only to be super weak in another? We've gathered up all these MCU characters to dive deeper into these inconsistencies. Maybe, just maybe, we can make some sense out of this madness. Where do Captain Marvel's powers draw the line? For the majority of its runtime, her solo movie kept them bottled up. Once her powers were unleashed, however, all bets were off. She's basically the MCU's Superman, and her abilities make her nearly invincible. It was an issue the Russo brothers struggled with when making Avengers Endgame. The character's explanation that she was off helping other worlds and galaxies far, far away was feeble to say the least. This couldn't help feeling like an excuse to keep her away so she didn't just solve all the problems. But then when she did show up, Thanos was able to knock her aside without much trouble. He needed an Infinity Stone to do it, but still a little underwhelming after all the hype associated with the character. Now let's move on to the Mad Titan himself, our favorite purple villain other than Ivan Ooze.
The ooze is back!
But what is up with Thanos' power levels? He's super powerful one day, moderately powerful the next. At the start of Avengers Infinity War, the dude's got the Power Stone, so it's no wonder why he's able to school the Hulk so thoroughly. But how do you explain his insane strength in Avengers Endgame when he doesn't have any of the Infinity Stones? I mean, I get that he needed to be a formidable threat for the film's big battle, but still. He takes on Cap, Iron Man, and Thor at the same time and barely breaks a sweat. What is even happening? Thor's another example of a guy who's super powerful one day and super weak the next. He is thousands and thousands of years old. His abilities are known throughout countless galaxies, and his achievements are unparalleled. For every amazing moment demonstrating his strength, his grand entrance in Wakanda and Infinity War being the standout, there are quite a few that don't make as much sense. Like when Loki stabbed him in the first Avengers. Didn't that seem to weaken him a bit too easily? Black Panther is such an awesome character, we're almost willing to forgive the fact that he is so overpowered. But having a full vibranium suit that makes him practically indestructible makes it difficult to fear for his life. Doesn't it seem like the odds are always stacked in his favor?
Wakanda forever!
Maybe in the sequels, there will be an opportunity to tone his abilities down a bit to ramp up the suspense. This seems like a necessity to ensure the sequel lives up to expectations. This brings us to our next entry, everyone's favorite
friendly neighborhood Spider-Man.
Honestly, we're not sure if Peter Parker is underpowered or overpowered. Probably both? The inconsistencies come when he's able to lift cars and help take on Mad Titans, but then has to struggle against villains like the Vulture. The Vulture is just a normal guy with a powerful bird suit. Shouldn't that be a walk in the park for good old Spidey? We get that Peter Parker is still young and learning the ropes. Or webs? Zing! But the fact that he seems to have mastered his powers one day and struggles with them the next is a little frustrating. Here's a big one fans are constantly bringing up. Scarlet Witch. Scarlet Witch, you are awesome. But seriously, you still have yet to show off your true potential. For crying out loud, this is the woman who was able to imprison an entire world, Avengers and X-Men included, in a fantasy illusion in the House of M comic. In the MCU, the most she does is lift things with her mind and zap people. This seems like a comical misuse of the character, especially considering all the amazing stories she's been involved with in the comics. Maybe her new Disney Plus series will help solve that. And don't even get us started on Vision, ugh. I mean, I guess technically we've already started, so let's go ahead and dive in. In Avengers Age of Ultron, he's presented as basically a god. He's got the Mind Stone, the ability to wield Thor's hammer. Is there anything he can't do? And then we get to Captain America Civil War and Avengers Infinity War, and he's suddenly getting beat up left and right. To be fair, he clearly doesn't want to hurt anyone in Civil War. After all, everybody's friends. And true, he was badly injured in Infinity War, which explains why he was a bit weaker. But it still seems odd to us. Oh, Gamora, we're still not over your death.
I'm sorry, little one.
Sure, it was great to see you kind of return in Avengers Endgame, but it's just not the same. You're not the Gamora we've come to know and love over the past few years. You're back at square one. And just as depressing is the fact that it still feels like you haven't been given your due. In the comics, Gamora is a force to be reckoned with. She was trained by Thanos himself. He even gave her a nearly unbreakable skeleton. So why does she still feel so underpowered in the movies? We can't explain it. Hela is the goddess of death, which, not gonna lie, is a pretty great nickname.
I'm Hela.
So at the start of Thor Ragnarok, Hela destroys Thor's hammer, which is nuts. She takes out a whole army by herself and even gives the god of thunder a run for his money. It takes nothing less than Ragnarok itself to destroy her. Overpowered much? And here's the other thing. We don't know if she's actually dead. I mean, can you even kill the goddess of death? We have a feeling Hela will rear her spiky head in the MCU again sooner or later. And let's talk about Black Widow a bit. To be clear, she's awesome. We can at least all agree on that point, right? She's one of the greatest and coolest spies the world has ever known. Her hand-to-hand combat skills and weapons training puts plenty of others to shame. That being said, isn't it a little strange that she can hold her own against superpowered beings that give our most powerful heroes reason to pause? Like, think back to the first Avengers. She's right in the thick of it, taking out aliens left and right. She stumbles a bit, but not that much. Then in Infinity War, she's holding her own with the rest of the Avengers against powerful monsters. She gets through these struggles a bit too easily. This brings us to our next Avenger, Hawkeye. Look, we got the same beef with him as we do with Black Widow. Hawkeye is an awesome character. He's got great hair too. Well, he used to have great hair, at least until that new Avengers Endgame do. The guy has so many amazing skills and talents. But like Black Widow, he's only human and he's up against crazy forces. Writer-director Joss Whedon even called out the absurdity of Hawkeye's character in Avengers Age of Ultron. And yet he's keeping up with the likes of Captain America and the Hulk. You're right, Hawkeye, it really doesn't make any sense. But I guess admitting is the first step. While we're on the topic of the Avengers of the less superpowered variety, can we bring up Sam Wilson?
It's the Falcon.
Sam is awesome and loyal. He's always on your left, getting our heroes' backs whenever they need him.
Say it. Don't you say it.
Left.
Come on!
But doesn't he seem a tad bit underpowered? Especially when you consider the fact that he's the next Captain America. This is in the comics, so it makes sense, but we're going to need to get this guy some super soldier serum ASAP. Get on that, peeps! Seriously though, we're pumped to see Sam take on the mantle of Captain America. It's just that we need to see some more evidence of Sam's talents on his own. Here's hoping we can get some more answers in the upcoming Falcon and Winter Soldier team-up show on Disney+. Now, Peter Quill. There's a superpowered dude.
Dance off, bro. Me and you.
As we learned in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, Starlord is Ego's son, and therefore partially a celestial being. But for someone so powerful, doesn't he just seem like a guy with a cool helmet, laser guns, and rocket boots? It would have been nice to see some of his more celestial abilities come into play during the events of Avengers Infinity War, if only they didn't disappear due to Ego's defeat. They could have really used his help to finish off Thanos. Or, considering Quill ruined the Avengers plan in Infinity War, maybe not. Yeah, Quill needs a bit more work. But hey, that's what Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 is for, right? You have to admit, as awesome as he is, Captain America's power levels are all over the place. In the first Captain America, he's infiltrating bases, taking out Nazis left and right. In the first Avengers, he's taken down superpowered space aliens. But then in Winter Soldier's opening fight scene, Batroc, some guy with a penchant for fancy flips, is able to hold his own against Cap? Seriously, this is the guy who was able to hold Thanos back in Infinity War, but standard hand-to-hand combat is a struggle. We're not buying it. And while this does provide some nifty action sequences and fight scenes, it doesn't make sense in the grand scheme of the cinematic universe. What about Captain America's big baddie, Red Skull?
Hail Hydra.
Only he wasn't really that big or bad in the first Captain America film, was he? Especially when you compare him to the version of the character in the comics. Red Skull is a formidable foe in the source material. He might not have any super abilities per se, but his intellect is unmatched. It feels like the character still hasn't gotten his due in the MCU. Maybe the character's time in Vormir has expanded his mind and abilities in a whole new way. There's a solid chance we'll see him again. You know, Captain America had a point when he poked fun at Tony Stark's abilities. Take away that suit and what are you? Then again, Tony Stark also had a point with his response.
Genius, billionaire, playboy, philanthropist.
The fact of the matter is, Tony Stark might be a genius, but he's still a regular guy. No superpowers, just his awesome suits. But even with the suit's protections, it feels like Stark has emerged from too many battles relatively unscathed. Shouldn't the force of some of those blows shatter his bones despite the extra protection? Iron Man is powerful, but is he really powerful enough to take on someone like Thanos? the Winter Soldier. Here's another man with a stunning haircut that doesn't quite make up for the fact that he's a tad bit overpowered. He has spent years and years honing his skills as a master assassin. Technically, he's not supposed to be superpowered, but look at the way he takes on his best bud Steve Rogers in Winter Soldier. So does Bucky have superpowers or not? Can anyone explain this to us? Seriously, look at the way he takes everybody on in Winter Soldier and Civil War. How is he able to hold his own against T'Challa and Captain Rogers if he doesn't? Somebody tell me! I need answers, people! Sorry, we're okay. Let's just move on to the next one. Now on the flip side of things, let's talk about another underpowered character. This is another one of the Guardians of the Galaxy variety. We're talking about Drax the Destroyer.
Yes!
And sure, Drax might destroy an awful lot in these movies, and Dave Bautista's performance is nothing short of magnificent. But Drax still isn't up to par with his comic book iteration's power levels. Doesn't it feel like he's always getting beat up too much too? Drax was specifically created to take down Thanos and should be able to hold his own with the most powerful Avengers. Instead, villains like Ronan just toss him around like he's nothing. Too often, Drax ends up being the butt of the joke. Okay, look, we get it. Pepper Potts has spent most of the MCU on the sidelines. Honestly, it was kinda cool to see her take an active role in Avengers Endgame's final epic battle. But didn't it feel a little out of nowhere? Pepper has never hinted to Tony that she wanted to don her own super cool suit. We've seen little evidence of her fighting capabilities outside all the extremist stuff in Iron Man 3. We're okay with her taking a part in the big battle at the end of Endgame. It was kinda cool to see her and Tony fighting side by side. Still, maybe we could have had just one scene where we see Pepper training in one of Tony's suits. Just saying. Doctor Strange is another character that seems to be both overpowered and underpowered simultaneously. His only solo entry so far was his origin story, so it's no big surprise he was still learning the mystic ropes.
Dormammu, I've come to bargain.
But then we see him again in Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame, and he's the Sorcerer Supreme we all know and love from the comics. Here's hoping Doctor Strange's second solo entry will find the balance between the two. How about the Hulk? It feels like something's missing here. Oh, that's right, vulnerability! He's one of the most powerful beings on the planet, probably the entire universe. He can't be stopped. When Hulk wants to smash, Hulk smashes, and may God be with you should you decide to stand in his way.
I'm sorry.
The problem is, there's hardly any stopping the Hulk when he's on a roll. Infinity War and Endgame shook things up, giving us a nice change of pace for the character. The biggest question is, where do they go from here? It feels like Bruce Banner has gotten a complete story arc. Maybe it's best to let this one end on a high note. Groot falls into the same category as the Hulk. He's a character everyone loves, and for good reason, but he's also virtually indestructible. Groot can take out anything and anyone. His freaking arm serves as the handle for one of the most powerful weapons in the universe. He can even resurrect from the dead as a new Groot just by planting him again. So you can't kill him, you can't really hurt him, and he can take out tons of people with one swing of his arms. We're gonna have to put him in the overpowered bucket. Sorry, Groot, you're great, but you know it's true. Let's take a moment to talk about Ultron. He was only around for one entry, but we still think he deserves some credit. After all, the things he started in Age of Ultron have had ramifications all through the remainder of the MCU. And yet, despite his abilities, he couldn't seem to get his stuff together long enough to defeat the Avengers. And does it seem odd that he didn't upload his consciousness anywhere else for safekeeping? It's no wonder it was so easy for the Avengers to beat him. Nebula has mastered the art of pouting like no other character in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Just look at those intense stares, those angry glances. There's something to admire, right? She doesn't have any time for your nonsense. Nebula is part Lufomoid, part robot, and all awesome. But even so, her abilities tend to fluctuate depending on what the plot needs from her. Plus, she seems indestructible, much like Groot or the Hulk. She might feel pain, but it doesn't stop her from taking on foes far more powerful than she is. And to cap things off, let's go ahead and throw Loki into the mix. Because you just can't have a good MCU list if Loki doesn't make an appearance. Loki is the perfect encapsulation of villains you love to hate. Throughout the MCU, he's been a pain in everyone's side, but he's just so darn charming. I mean, look at that face. How can you hate that face? And like so many others on this list, Loki is just a tad bit overpowered. His illusion crafting abilities give him an edge few other villains have. Plus, he is way better looking than the majority of them. Not fair. So how do you feel, true believers? Are there any overpowered or underpowered Marvel superheroes you feel we neglected to mention? Do you agree and or disagree with our choices? Let us know in the comments below. And hey, if you feel so inclined, feel free to subscribe to our channel too. See you next time.